Welcome into another episode of Locked On Phillies. Today, we're looking at some of the early options in center field at the trade deadline and what the Phillies have in house and debating what the best option is.
You are Locked On Phillies, your daily Philadelphia Phillies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, this is Locked On Phillies. I'm your host, Connor Thomas. Thank you so much for joining us today. We come to you as part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. You may know me from some of my other work in the sports talk space. I've been on air over at 97.5 The Fanatic doing sports talk radio here in Philadelphia for over 5 years. I've been a credentialed Philadelphia Phillies media member for 4 seasons, and this is now my 4th year as the host of Locked On Phillies. Please make sure that you're rating and reviewing if you're checking us out in podcast form. Locked On Phillies, as always, is available wherever you get your podcasts. And we're also available for you to watch us on YouTube. If you're doing that, hit that subscribe button. It'll get you notifications when new episodes are posted. It's super free and easy to subscribe to the YouTube, and it really helps us out. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So you can go ahead and check out FanDuel, make a little bit of that extra money. NBA Finals, NHL Stanley Cup Finals, everything's going on right now, plus the baseball season. So we're going to start by taking a look at some center field options for the Phillies with the trade deadline about a month and a half away. We're going to get more into this as we get closer to it, but I figured today, with no game yesterday, would be a great time to get into that. We're also going to talk about a strategy the Phillies could use with Kyle Schwarber with the contract and how they could potentially get him back, or maybe let him walk. Yeah, that sounds crazy right now. I'll explain. And we're going to preview Phil's Blue Jays. The Phil's may be out for some revenge after dropping 2 of 3 to the Jays last week. But I had this conversation on the radio this morning, and I wanted to bring it to the podcast. Center field options for the Phillies right now. Before we get into any of the names, the market is weak. Yeah, it's just not a great space in Major League Baseball in general right now. It's certainly not going to be for the trade deadline. There's just no big names unless somehow the Angels finally decide, hey, Mike Trout, we're moving you. We got to. It's time to just cut ties with that era. We got to go. And if Mike Trout's available, pick up the phone right now. I don't care about the injury history. I don't care about availability issues. You go for Mike Trout because, come on, right-handed bat, that caliber in the outfield, rest him the entire season, then just play him in October. That's whatever. That's not a true conversation to be having right now, though. So it's a bit of a thin market. And there are really only 2 names that have popped up. Technically, there are like 3, but one of them is kind of played out. So the one that is played out, Bo Bichette was brought up. Toronto Blue Jays, you're going to see him this weekend at Citizens Bank Park. The Blue Jays have gone on a bit of a tear. They're in contention. Unless they majorly fall off, they don't look like sellers right now. So he's probably out. The 2 names that you're looking at as far as acquisitions are Luis Robert Jr. of the Chicago White Sox and Cedric Mullins of the Baltimore Orioles. We'll talk about those players in depth in a second, but I want to lay out the other things that you can do. You can keep the status quo. Rojas and Marsh, platoon, going back and forth on that. Hasn't really gone great for the Phillies this year, and that may be an understatement, but you can still do that. You can also, when he's back healthy and ready to come up, call up Justin Crawford. The Phillies may feel like that's enough, and if they think that's enough, well, then you could just go ahead and say, okay, Crawford's our center fielder. We make a move at left to either find a platoon mate for Max Kepler or a true starting left fielder that can play over Max Kepler because Kepler's been struggling, and you can do that. Or the other option that you could do there is just like you can retool the way that the outfield is structured by moving Bryce back to the outfield, and then you can move like Marsh to left and Rojas in center, and I don't know, and Castellanos to left, and then you have Rojas in center, and then you do that, and that's enough of an upgrade to the outfield. That one, you'd still have to make a move. And I don't think that's likely for them to make these major changes to the defensive alignment. We've talked about it before, but that seems least likely to me. I also don't think that Cedric Mullins or Luis Robert are in a spot where they'd improve the team enough. I just don't see it from them. Like if you're thinking Cedric Mullins, you may be thinking Cedric Mullins from 2-3 years ago. Guy just hasn't been good this year. He's been a little hurt this year. Baltimore will be sellers, and people will be interested in Mullins, but I don't know. He could play center field. Like, he's a good defensive outfielder. He's not shown a lot of pop. He's not hitting for average this year. He's marginally better than Brandon Marsh and Yohan Rojas, and a lot of that margin comes from track record, resume, not what he's doing right now. On the other hand, Luis Robert, I mean, I guess he's got some track record. Like, he had a really, really high ceiling that you were looking at, but my goodness, has he fallen off since the White Sox tried to trade him in the last deadline. They didn't move him. They should have moved him. He's been terrible this year. Like, I guess you could trade for him and imagine the upside of having a guy like him in the outfield if he turns into the player he looked like early with the White Sox. But right now, that guy, I don't look at him as a major upgrade in the outfield. I don't think baseball looks at him as a major upgrade in the outfield for a lot of contending teams. You could get him cheap because of that. It may not cost you a top prospect. They wanted like Andrew Painter last year, and now the guy's he's hitting in the 100s. So maybe you buy low and hope for a high return on Luis Robert. But neither of those guys feel like a big enough upgrade to part with a prospect to bring into the Phillies. Like, I don't need a third person in the platoon of Rojas, Marsh, and whoever, Robert or Mullins, that's just like marginally better. If you're going to make a move at a starting position on a World Series contending team, you need to make a big move, right? A noticeable difference. Not Austin Hayes, who I still think got a bum rap here for his time. Not Whit Merrifield, not Max Kepler. Like, no, go out and get somebody who is a bona fide true starting center fielder in this league. Now, that guy may not be available. So that's the tough thing. Like, it's thin, and we'll see what more names pop up as the season continues and we get closer to the July 31st trade deadline. But there's not a lot of relief coming from the trade market at the center field spot. That's why, for me, and sticking with the status quo, you could do in the regular season. But if Marsh and Rojas are rotating at center field in the postseason, the rest of this lineup better be unbelievable, because I don't see them being out there every day on a World Series team, one or the other of them. Call up Justin Crawford. That's what I would do. Now, that doesn't have to be right now. It doesn't have to be in a week. It doesn't have to be in 2 weeks. Remember, it's July. It's June 13th as I'm recording this. Happy Friday the 13th, by the way. Everybody try and stay as lucky as you can. But when I look at that and I say, okay, what's the time frame for Crawford? Why haven't they called him up yet? Well, there's no rush. Last year, the Phillies, with a lesser pitching staff and with multiple issues in the lineup similar to this year's, they won 95 games in the National League East. They were playing Marsh and Rojas out there in center. It's not like they had this great center fielder last year, and that's how they got it done. So they believe, I'd imagine, that they can win enough regular season games with that tandem. So if that's the case, then you're in no rush to get Crawford up here. And some people are like, well, call him up anyway. You're wasting time. You're not wasting time. You're giving the kid enough time to develop, because clearly if the Phillies felt like he was ready, he'd be up here. And they don't feel like he's ready yet. And currently he's injured. He got a little lower body strain going on. I forget if it's calf or hamstring or whatever it is. But so he's been out of the lineup for a little bit down there at AAA Lehigh. Once he's ready, he'll have to work his way back. And then maybe we'll see him called up in, like, I don't know, early July would be the target date that I'm looking for, like first week of July. Give yourself a couple weeks of him before the deadline, and you can get an idea of if he can play. Because if he can, you just have to go get a left fielder. And that's easier, or a corner outfielder. And there may be more options on the market. I haven't really looked at corner outfield spots yet, because center field is the glaring weakness. And until they call up Crawford, you're looking at center field as your main position player acquisition at the deadline. But as you can see, there aren't that many great options. There's a guy that's underachieving in Baltimore on a bad team, a guy that's majorly underachieving in Chicago on a bad White Sox team, two guys that are underachieving for the Phillies, and one guy who's in AAA who has never played at the major league level, who's currently injured, and you don't know what he's going to be when he comes up. Good prospect. I hope Crawford is going to be as good as he looks in the minors at the major league level. But the fact of the matter is, we just don't know that. We can't say that with certainty at this time, and we can't find out until the Phillies decide to bring him up. So As much as the center field position has been an issue for the Philadelphia Phillies this year, they may be better off sticking with the devil they know rather than trading prospects for the devil they don't. That's where I sit right now. The last thing you want to do is trade valuable capital for a Luis Robert Jr. or a Cedric Mullins and then have that guy show up and do nothing for this team, and you're in the same spot with less farm system. That's worst case scenario. And I'm not ready to do that right now until either those players show me more over the next month and change, or the Phillies call up Justin Crawford and he shows you he's got nothing. We'll figure it out. And for the record, I do think Crawford's going to be good at the major league level. I don't think he's going to show him nothing, but that's projecting. We haven't seen it yet. You never know. Even some of the top prospects struggle when they first come up, and maybe even struggle for the first couple years. Coming up next, this guy, he rarely struggles. He is a little bit now, but Kyle Schwarber, the big conversation around him is how do the Phillies find a way to re-sign him? There's an interesting strategy that has been brought up about Kyle Schwarber that I want to break down for you and tell you why it's kind of a win-win situation. It may not seem like it if Schwarber walks, but we'll talk about that coming up next. Well, let's talk about our friends over at Trade Coffee. Trade Coffee is the best. And coffee isn't just a drink. It's a ritual, a lifeline, the thing that gets you from half asleep to fully functioning. I wake up at 4 a.m. every morning. Man, got to be awake. And it's super essential, coffee is. And why would you settle for anything less than amazing if it's that important to you? That's where Trade Coffee comes in. Trade is the #1 coffee destination in the U.S., delivering fresh, incredible coffee from over 50 of the country's top roasters. Whether you're a cold brew fan or maybe a pour-over purist, they've got a roast that you're going to love. And they have this quiz you can take, and it matches you with like their first bag they'll send you. They get it spot on every time. They figure out your likes, your dislikes, and they pick something out. They curate it for you. The coffee's always fresh. It smells amazing. And honestly, the problem with it is it's going to ruin grocery store coffee for you. You're never going to want to get your coffee from anywhere other than Trade. And if the first match isn't perfect, Trade's going to replace it for free until they get it just right. Their prices are comparable to grocery store brands, so you're not paying a boatload for it, but the flavor's on a whole different level. And not only are their prices comparable, but right now Trade is exclusively offering our customers 50% off your 1-month trial at drinktrade.com/lockedonmlb. That's TRADE.com/lockedonmlb for 50% off your 1-month trial. Drink Trade. Again, TRADE.com/lockedonmlb. Go ahead and check them out for all your coffee needs. A Schwarber strategy that fans are not going to like, but I'm going to put out there, and you need to understand where I'm coming from with this scenario, or at least try to understand. You don't have to agree with me, but we had a conversation also this morning on radio about Kyle Schwarber and how the Phillies are going to go about handling this. Now, history would tell you, with the Aaron Nola situation, the Phillies could be comfortable in letting Kyle Schwarber hit free agency. And what they would do is they would go to Schwarber and they would say, hey, listen, you can hit free agency. We're going to let you set your market, see what you can get out there. But we're going to promise you right now, competitive offers, we're going to match those. So let's say New York gives you 3 years, $100 million. Bring that to us, and we'll give that to you to keep you here as a Philly. Or we'll try and give that to you to keep you here as a Philly because, hey, you like it here, right? And that all makes sense. If he wants to stay, but he wants his value to be proper, go figure out what your value is. And then tell us, show us the offer sheets and stuff like that, and we'll get ready to roll. We'll re-sign you. That all sounds well and good. It's a little sketchy, though, because what if a team offers a price that Schwarber doesn't like or likes too much, that the Phillies can't match, I should say? What happens if a team entices Schwarber because, I don't know, let's say it's the Cubs and he's played there before. They were just in town. And you could tell by some of the stuff, like he's still tight with that team and that he knows that city well. Like, let's not pretend like Philadelphia is the only place Kyle Schwarber's ever been and never wants to be. We'll see, but if he likes Philadelphia, great. Maybe, though, there's another team that can like entice him away that he's familiar with and can also pay him a boatload of money. That's the risk you run by letting him go to free agency. And that's why people get nervous about it, because they don't want Schwarber off this team. They don't want him to walk away. And in this discussion, it was brought up this morning, what if the Phillies have just like a garbage second half? And then he goes to free agency. He's like, I don't know if I really want to be there. JT's a free agent. Ranger's a free agent. His team's getting older. Like, I don't know if this is the best place for me. I don't know if their championship contention window is staying open that long. He may choose to go elsewhere. Well, here's my answer to that scenario. If the Phillies have a rough enough second half that Kyle Schwarber looks at as like, yeah, this place is a dead end. I don't want to be here anymore. I appreciate my time in Philadelphia, but I'm on to try and win another ring. Well, you probably should let Schwarber walk if that is the case. Not like out of spite. No. If the Phillies, for some reason, were to have a bad enough end of the year, like bad enough second half, to where Schwarber's looking at other organizations and saying those guys are clearly more contending than the Phillies, because he's not going to like the Dodgers, maybe the Yankees. But if that happens, you should want Schwarber off the team. Here's why. It's got nothing to do with Schwarber and his ability. He's a great, great player. But if you have to rebuild, you're not paying a boatload of money to Kyle Schwarber. You're just not. And I don't know if this is going to be a rebuilding offseason for the Phillies. I hope it's not. I don't think it should be, because they have Painter and Abel and Miller and Crawford and this young infusion of talent that should be up within the next year or so, depending on who you're talking about there. But like, you don't want to hamstring yourself by keeping Kyle Schwarber here. And also, Bryce Harper eventually is going to have to DH. He's going to. He's got a wrist issue. He's had injury issues. He's on the IL right now. He's getting older. You're long-term committed to him. He's not going to play first base forever. Eventually, he's the DH of this team. Now, is that in 2 years, or is that in 4 years? Or is that in 6 years? Like, it may not come as soon as it seems right now, because he is currently injured. But that's another thing that if you re-sign Schwarber, you restrict yourself from doing. I want Kyle Schwarber back. I do. Because I think he's an important part of this team. I think this team is going to continue to contend. I think they're going to make a good run at it this year. These are all of the things. But if you think the Phillies stink, and I have plenty of people text me, comment on everything, all of this stuff when I'm doing my radio job or on the podcast, on the YouTube comments, and say, yeah, this team's not good enough. They're not going to get it done. I don't believe in them to be World Series winners or deep playoff contenders or anything like that. You might just want to let Schwarber walk, right? You probably should, because that gets more money off the books. You're not committing it to an older player. And now you can move Bryce to DH, sign a younger first baseman, figure out a way to do that. Call up Crawford. Outfield gets better. Maybe call up Miller. Painter will have been up this season. Like, it opens up your opportunity to sign other players that are more in the window of like the next 3 to 4 years. I don't think Schwarber's dropping off anytime soon, but I also don't know that if you have a really rough end of the year, that the Phillies aren't looking to do hey, we're already losing a couple of guys. Screw it. Let's just redo the whole thing, or redo a large part of this baseball team. So I don't know. Is that a crazy thing to say? That there are some Phillies fans that, if you believe this team isn't good enough, should be okay with Kyle Schwarber walking? It feels weird to me to want it both ways. Yeah, they're not good enough this year. They're not going to win anything, but Schwarber's got to be back. Those two things don't really go together. He's a win-now player. And if you're not in the belief that the Phillies are a win-now team, well, maybe it's better that you just let him go in free agency. I'm firmly in the camp that they're a win-now baseball team focused on fighting for the World Series and in contention at this moment in time. They're one of the top 6 or 7 teams in baseball. The major power rankings all have them at like 6 or 7. Like, they're a good baseball team, and they're going to make moves at the deadline. And that's why I know that they're going to be in contention down the stretch and in the postseason. But it's intriguing to me that there are some people who are Phillies think, but also got to have Schwarber. Because all you're doing by that is extending the time with this core, and that could lead to major issues down the line of missing some prime years of guys like Crawford, Painter, Abel, and Miller. So just food for thought. Letting Schwarber go to free agency seems like what they're going to do. Letting him set the market, how dangerous that can be, with other teams potentially making better offers than you can as the Philadelphia Phillies. And if he walks, because he doesn't want to be here, because the second half goes haywire or something like that, and they don't compete or they get bounced first round again, maybe you should be okay with that, considering how much this team is stagnant in roster. Like, they don't change very much year to year under Dave Dombrowski with this core, and how sometimes you need to jumpstart that by making tough decisions. It's very early for this, but it was just something that popped up today, and I wanted to throw out that idea of like, well, if he doesn't want to be in Philadelphia, that's probably a good indicator that you're not a contender or not a true contender. And then maybe you should let him go so that you can build yourself into a true contender. And I don't know if just re-signing Kyle Schwarber will get that done. Not that it restricts you from doing everything. There's no salary cap, but I don't know. You get what I'm saying there. It's a tough decision that has to be made on how you handle it, because we all love the guy, but he is aging just like a lot of the Philly stars. And there are some young guys that you may want to start to push for that window. These are all preemptive conversations that we'll have much more of an eye on when we get later into the season and figure out where the story ends for the 2025 Phillies. Where it goes next, though, Citizens Bank Park, a rematch with the Toronto Blue Jays. Again, you just dropped 2 of 3 from these guys last week. How do the Phillies bounce back? We'll talk about that next as we wrap up today's episode of Locked On Phillies. Let's talk FanDuel, though, because the NBA playoffs are in full swing. Game 4 of the NBA Finals is tonight. And Indiana, OKC. OKC's got to fight back. They're down 2-1. They're going to need to find a way to keep themselves in this series. A lot of people thought they were the better team. They were the betting favorites starting the series. So maybe if you still believe that, hammer them in Game 4. Take an eye on it. And whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, or just who's going to win the game, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it super easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live with player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays. So fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. Who's showing up big in the playoffs? 2 guys. SGA, Tyrese Halliburton. Those are the guys that are leading these teams. In the big moments, they're getting the opportunities. How does that affect the way that you bet? Let it influence you to determine the trends. Think about those things. You can win some money on FanDuel. And also, if you're new to FanDuel, well, it's super easy to win money on FanDuel because it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com, and when you place your first $5 bet, if it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. So what you do is you go on there and you say, okay, I'll take Oklahoma City plus 40 in the game. Just do an alternate line. Put $5 on it. You're getting $200 the second that wins. You don't need any payout on the actual bet. It's a great setup. Again, head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Phillies, Blue Jays, round 2. Phillies just lost 2 or 3 to this team. I've mentioned that a couple of times. Are they out for revenge this weekend? They could be. And you know what's funny? If you think back to that series against the Blue Jays, the Phillies didn't exactly get dominated. They did in the Jesus Luzardo start. And Luzardo bounced back this last series that you had. So that was good to see against the Chicago Cubs for him to give a great start. But he got shelled in Game 3. Game 2, Mick Abel threw pretty well, and the Phillies got walked off. Now, they got walked off by Alejandro Kirk, who's a catcher, who's very familiar with Jordan Romano's stuff. He caught him for years up there in Toronto. So it's kind of understandable, and that was a tight game all the way through. Game 1, the Phils handled the Blue Jays pretty comfortably. So if you don't think this Phillies team can beat this Blue Jays team, I'm going to tell you didn't know what you were watching that last series. Just because the Phillies lost 2 of 3, and the series finale was this blowout loss because Luzardo was probably tipping pitches, that makes you feel like, oh, well, I don't know. They didn't handle Toronto too well last time they played them. Wipe that out of your mind. The Phillies are the better team in this one, even though the record only shows 1 game of difference. Toronto 38-30, the Phillies 39-29. So yeah, we'll see how this series goes. But the Phillies also have their pitching lined up for this series pretty well. Ranger Suarez throws tonight against Kevin Gausman. Suarez the better pitcher in that matchup. We'll dive deeper into tonight's game in particular a little bit later in the preview. But if Ranger throws tonight, that means Sanchez throws tomorrow. If Sanchez throws tomorrow, that means the Sunday's game, oh yeah, you guessed it, it's Wheels Day. And you've got an opportunity for Suarez, Sanchez, Wheeler, your best 3 pitchers right now, Luzardo still pending on whether or not he's in that conversation after 2 blow-up starts. But you got the pitching matchups. You're at home. You owe them one. 2 out of 3 is the expectation in this series. It just absolutely has to be. You got to go win this series. I'm not trying to say, must-win series or anything like that, but that's something you got to keep an eye on. The Blue Jays are running hot. They're 8-2 in their last 10 games, but some of those are wins over the Phillies. And the Phillies are hopefully a bit of a different team after that series win over the Chicago Cubs. Maybe there's some momentum on the Phil's side. The Blue Jays have won their last 3 games straight, so there's certainly some momentum on the Blue Jays side, but it's something that we'll all keep an eye on over the weekend to see if the Phils can handle business better. And with a big series against the Mets looming in a week, it's important that you take advantage of this series and the one starting Monday against the Miami Marlins to roll into the matchup with the Mets at Citizens Bank Park feeling as good as you can. As far as tonight's game is concerned, Kevin Gausman, right-handed pitcher, you should be able to get after him. He's got 73 strikeouts and 76 2/3 innings pitched. So he's a little under a strikeout an inning guy. Just for reference, Ranger Suarez is 38 strikeouts and 43 1/3 innings pitched. So it doesn't necessarily mean he's a bad pitcher. It just means he's a contact guy, which is why he's given up 62 hits in those 76 2/3 innings. Also 17 walks, 9 homers. So you can go get him. It's a 3.87 ERA he rolls in with, which is not stellar. Like, it's not anything unhittable. And, righties, easier for the Phillies lineup to match up with than lefties. I'd imagine Brandon Marsh is available, so I'd expect him to start in center, Kepler in left, Stott at second. Stott at second. And then you'd probably see the Otto Kemp at first, Alec Boehm at third alignment again tonight. That's what I would guess. The guy that I'm watching most in this series, though, is I'm watching Kyle Schwarber. He went yard in the final game of the series with the Cubs. Now, he gets another righty to face in Gausman, and it's June, and the weather's warm, and we'll see if that was a spark of something going, because Schwarber has been ice cold lately after being red hot for the pretty much entire month of May, and this team really needs him, especially with Harper out. So if there's the biggest hitter you can get going in this series, it's Kyle Schwarber, and he's getting a righty that he could feast on. We'll see what he's able to do, but I wouldn't be shocked if he goes yard 2 more times in this series against Toronto. Their pitching is not anything insanely good, so you'd be able to get by on that. We already talked about the pitching the Phillies are going to have, so I'm not too concerned about the rotational matchups. But I am also keeping an eye on 2 really hot right-handed hitters for the Phillies. Trey Turner, he's rolling. He'll probably be at the top of the lineup again today. I don't see them moving Stott into the top of the lineup just because it's a righty. He's struggling. But Turner's been red hot. And Alec Boehm, all of a sudden, is hitting like 336 or something since the start of June. If he keeps that going, imagine how much deeper this Phillies lineup looks like when Bryce Harper comes back. Like, Boehm is kind of getting on one of those, and we've seen him before in the regular season, not in the postseason. But let's not pretend like, well, this guy just stinks all the time. He's never hit well. He's never gone on these hot stretches. No. Boehm has had heaters where he's been one of the more quality or one of the more clutch hitters in baseball for like months worth of time in a season. We haven't seen it recently. Maybe we're starting to see it now. So those are the things that I'm focused on in the series against the Blue Jays. You got to take 2 out of 3. Like, if you don't, you lose another series, it wipes all the momentum from that Cubs series. That's gone out the window. I can't have that, especially not like scuffling into a series with the Marlins. And I guess that could be a get-right series on Monday, which we'll talk about, as well as recapping what happens with the Blue Jays in 3 games this weekend. But I want to see this team start to make up some ground in the division. Put the Mets' feet to the fire so that when you match up with them next Friday, you're saying, okay, here we go. We might even be able to take a lead in the division if we handle our business. That's the goal, and it starts with Toronto, and it starts tonight. I think the Phils win tonight. I think they win the series because I always will take them in Wheeler games. I think on Monday we're feeling much better about where the fighting Phils are than what we did this past Monday after coming off a sweep by the Pirates. That's all for today's episode of Locked On Phillies. Once again, we're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Please make sure you're rating, reviewing, subscribing to the YouTube, all that stuff that really helps us out on Locked On Phillies. I appreciate all of you. Again, we'll be back on Monday, so you enjoy the weekend. Oh, and by the way, happy Father's Day to everybody out there. Father's Day coming on Sunday, including, of course, Papa T, my dad. Hope you have a happy Father's Day as well. I'll see him on Sunday, so I'll tell him myself. But you guys all, to all the dads out there, hope you have a good Father's Day. Hope you have a happy Phillies weekend with some wins. And I'll talk to you Monday on the next episode of Locked On Phillies.